Hey everyone, Brendan Snyder here. How are you? Thanks so much for joining me and welcome to What's on My CD Wall. Yes, this right here where I'm going to be going through every CD in my collection one by one individually, letting you guys check it out. We started here on the top row last time. That was the A's. We're going to be picking up down here with a few A's and getting right into the B's and continuing ahead. So most of you guys know that I had recently filmed a video that was called what's in my 12,000 CD collection, because that's roughly the number of CDs I have. But that was just a big, broad overview. Whereas this here is actually about going through each and every CD that I've got. Start at the beginning, go all the way through to the end. So maybe a little slow going, but I think you guys are going to see and find some really cool hidden gems amongst this collection, which might lead you guys to go search some stuff out. We're going to get into it here in just a bit. But before we start, if you're new to my channel and haven't already hit the subscribe button, please do. Also leave a comment, hit like. All those things do help support my channel. And hey, if you turn on notifications, then you won't miss anything like really cool videos of me going through my whole collection here. So, as I talked about in the last video, and I just want to remind everyone, especially anyone who's tuning in new for the first time for this, which is what's here is not everything. I have another CD wall of 800 that has sort of the creme de la creme, my favorite stuff that I go to all of the time. This is overflow. So this is albums that I don't necessarily pull out all the time. And I know some of you guys commented and said, oh, I got to have everything together. And that's fine. That's cool, man. That works for you. But I have 12,000 of these things. And I can't possibly have them all out. And I can't possibly have them all in the same place. So at least that's how it works for me. But what I want to point out is that as we start into this, and like when I get into Bon Jovi here under the letter B, you're going to see that I don't have the big famous albums like Slippery When Wet and stuff in this part, but I do own them. I am a completist, and for the most part, I have entire collections from every artist that I love and follow. And so just as a reminder, so don't think that just because what I'm pulling out here, maybe I don't have the big famous album and that I need to run out and buy it, because I actually do. And at some point I will do a start to finish on the 800 CD rack, the wall that I call the Wall of Wonder. But for now, at least, I thought we would start in this area and we'll just go from there. But let's get into it here. So as I said, we did this whole top rack, which started it with AC/DC, ended up with a group called Avery. And there's a few A's right here at the beginning that didn't fit on this, so we're gonna pick up with those. And we're starting with some Atlanta Rhythm Section, ARS, a twofer from the BGO Records label, Underdog and the Boys from Dorville. Good stuff. I have actually long since replaced that with a box set that has all of their albums. But sometimes I just can't get rid of these things. I want to pull out a jewel case version and sometimes, you know, take it in the car or whatever. So for now, at least, I'm hanging on to it. Sometimes I can get rid of those things, but I'm hanging on to that for the time being. All right, this one here, which is actually not part of that Atlanta Rhythm Section box set. This one here, which is Canela, title of it, and was a later day era album. This was a 1981 release, so I have that in here. And this is actually the later day one. That one was just earlier, but not part of the box set. This one here is called Truth in Structured Form. And so this one here, I think, is like 89. And so this was that later day era album I was thinking of. But basically, so filling out some of this, and that's another thing to kind of keep in mind. You can see behind me, I've got all these box sets. In fact, if we start to spin this around, you'll see just how many more there are going across. So sometimes the big hit famous albums are in those things there too. All right, last one was one that I found just randomly, didn't even know something like this one existed, called From the Vaults, a 2 CD collection from Atlanta Rhythm Section, gathering up rarities and stuff like that. They've actually released another version of this that has some of these, but not all of these. At first, I thought it was going to simply just repeat, and I found out there was a whole host of different ones between it. But that one is still off in a box because I think it came out last year, maybe it was the year before, but either way, it just has not made it over to the wall yet. All right, Ian Anderson, frontman for Jethro Tull, solo album. I don't know if this is his debut solo album, but definitely early on, 1980s. This one here, Walk Into the Light. Definitely sounding of the 80s, so it's not like Jethro Tull's A, which was intended to be an Ian Anderson solo album and still sounds like Jethro Tull. This one here, clearly something outside of that, but I like it a lot. Another Ian Anderson solo album, frontman for Jethro Tull. We got Homo Erectus album. This was a concept album that he did. David Bryan, from keyboardist from Bon Jovi, solo album from him. He has the song In These Arms. He does his own version of it. It's track number 10, but it is all instrumental piano. John Bon Jovi solo album. But this one is when he was known as Bon Jovi, spelled his normal way, and that's why they're able to release it. It's the Power Station years. So sort of unofficially released. I mean, the person who owns the rights to it released it, but it is not released by John himself, who said it would last forever. If you can find that track and listen to it, give it a listen, and you'll probably dig what this is and think, why don't you have it in your collection too? But that is very early John Bon Jovi from before he was signed. All right, and then of course we've got his actual solo album from the Young Guns movie that he did, Blaze of Glory, having that song, the song Miracle, which Jeff Beck plays on, whole host of other killer artists join on that. And then what is to date his most recent one, Destination Anywhere. This one here, done in the 90s, has a much more sound from the 90s. It's got sort of the beats and samples and things in it. Great album at the time. I liked it, but it's not one I go back to often because for me, it's very, very dated in that regard. And I was never a huge fan of that sounding stuff. I prefer my rock to just be rock. All right. Bon Jovi's greatest hits. It was called Crossroad. First one, at least. They've long since done some others. In fact, I think I got a couple more of them here. So this had a couple new tracks on it. Always was the big one. Then this came out around 2001, I think, called Tokyo Road. And it is a companion to Crossroad, but only released in Japan. And this one here focuses on a whole host of other songs. I think only a couple songs might repeat on this, but we definitely get all the more rock stuff, and it picks up and it adds in things that were from these days, and also has stuff from their latest album, Crush, on it. We have One Wild Night, their live album, and I'm trying to think. I think it is their one and only live album. Well, there is this live album where they performed the album. Which is This House Is Not For Sale live in its entirety, but I don't really consider that a live album per se, the same way that this is like a concert where they do, you know, the set list and it's the greatest hits and all that kind of stuff. But first and only live album done like that. Okay, we've got this one, live from the Have a Nice Day tour, and it is a 6-song thing. This was a Target-only exclusive release, so when this came out at that time, had to pick that up. But again, it's kind of fun because those are ones you can't just go and grab from the regular record store or Amazon or whatever. As I mentioned, does have another one actually called Greatest Hits, and this is a 2-disc edition. There is a single disc edition, and I don't like double discs. You know that. Why don't I have the single disc? Because the double disc had 2 new tracks on each disc, and the single disc edition only had 2 of the songs. So I wanted all 4 new songs that were released as part of this. What do you got? No Apologies, and This Is Love, This Is Life, and The More Things Change. Those were the 4 new songs that were part of that. All right, that's done with the Bon Jovi stuff, and as I said, I've got all the classic albums in the other room. We're moving on to Black Crowes and Black Crowes related stuff. Brothers of a Feather, Chris Robinson, Rich Robinson playing live with a whole host of stuff on here that isn't released on anything, as well as some deep cuts from Black Crowes and things of that nature. There's that. All right, Shake Your Moneymaker Deluxe 2 CD edition. I've also got the box set. 3-disc edition of this. All right. And then we've got the 2 CD edition of the Southern Harmony Musical Companion version, of which I've got the box set, 3-disc edition. various reasons why I will do those things. This one, High as the Moon, an EP that came with, and I can't recall now which disc, but I found it as a standalone CD single. It's got 4 live tracks: Remedy, Jealous Again, Thorn in My Pride, and Sting Me, all done live. But as a standalone EP, I wanted to have that in the collection. This next one's really cool. Grits and Gravy. It's a promotional disc, not sold in stores. That's the back side of it. I'll even open it up there. And if you want to pause and read the whole track listing on it. But it was essentially a greatest hits that came out for promotional use to be played by radio stations, and I found a copy of that. All right, my favorite album, after the big heyday of Shake Your Money Maker and Southern Harmony Musical Companion, this one, By Your Side, from 1999, absolutely an amazing rockin' album, and I think the newest album is the best album since this one. All right, Jimmy Page and the Black Crowes, Live at the Greek. I wish these guys would have recorded a studio album. Apparently they started to, and then for whatever reason, Jimmy Page either pissed off Rich Robinson or Rich Robinson pissed off Jimmy Page, but the album didn't happen. Okay, Lions, great album, just not considered one of my favorites. And I don't know if you can see it behind me right there. Sure enough, that one has the first 4 albums in it right before By Your Side, so that's why you're not seeing them with this here. All right, the Black Crowes Live 2 CD set. Oh, another Black Crowes album. This one is this is called Freak and Roll Into the Fog. Stand those back up so we can stay in order at least. War Paint, good album. A lot of these later day era Black Crowes albums, I would only like, 1 or 2 songs. Daughters of the Revolution, I really liked, and then the rest of the album wasn't so good to me. If there'd been more rock stuff like that, I would have dug it a lot more, which is one of the reasons I like the new album, Happiness Bastards, so much, because it finally rocks again, and so many of the songs on the album rock. But another thing I don't like, no track listing on the back side. No track listing on the inside. I've got to open this poster up before I can even get something remotely like that. So, kind of don't like that. Okay, Warpaint Live. Already didn't really particularly care for the album, and they released a whole live album doing it in its entirety. But as a completist, I got to have it in the collection. And I don't just buy things and stick them in the collection. And I know you're going to hear me say that a number of times because these are the sort of second tier releases for me. But at different times, I will be deep into the Black Crowes and I will really want something new, especially for those 15 years where they hadn't put out a new album. And so that's usually when I'll decide to go ahead and buy a live album or something to have. And I do listen to it a lot at that time because it's new to me. So there is a reason for me picking these up, even when I say I'm not a big fan of live albums. I think it just really means that I prefer new original material, of which you don't generally get on live albums, unlike that Chris and Rich Robinson, Brothers of a Feather, which actually had them doing a lot of covers and songs outside of the Black Crowes, which felt like getting a new album worth of stuff. Before the Frost Until the Freeze. This is the CD edition, so we get the Before the Frost. The digital version of Until the Freeze was a download only. I really wish they would release that as a CD. And the reunion, Shake Your Money Maker live in its entirety, plus a few hits kind of thing. Did pick this up. This here just didn't blow me away on the first disc, but the second disc is really, really good. It was almost like they didn't have a lot of energy performing their debut album in its entirety, but once they got to the other songs, it's like they woke up or something. All right, so we're done with the Black Crowes, and we're moving on to the next thing here. Don Barnes, solo album, debut solo album from guitar player from 38 Special and frontman for 38 Special. 2-disc version of it, where it's the album that was originally mixed at the time and shelved and never came out. And then when it was finally decided to get released, many, many years later, probably 15 to 20 years later, they remixed it. So you get 2 different versions of the album. But this is an outstanding album and should have been released back in the day. If you're a fan of 38 Special and never checked out Don Barnes, The album is called Ride the Storm. Go check this out. This is really good stuff. All right. Anybody remember the band Georgia Satellites? Well, Dan Baird, frontman for Georgia Satellites, doing solo stuff. This album here may be most popular of all his solo material here, called Love Songs for the Hearing Impaired. They had the song I Love You Period, which was a sort of minor hit, but the whole album really good. It features Brendan O'Brien producing. Of course, he became very famous working with Pearl Jam and then moving on to other big name artists like AC/DC and stuff like that. It's executive produced by Rick Rubin. Just shows you the quality of what this is. Second album from Dan Baird called Buffalo Nickel, The Younger Face, really good song. Check that out. Album called Out of the Mothballs, never took that off of it. Academy Records, $4.99. All right, we've got Dan Baird and the Sofa Kings. This one is Redneck Savant. I think this might be a live album if I'm not mistaken, could be wrong. Because he's got so many of these things, and this isn't even all of it. I've got a whole host of other Dan Baird releases, but the size of the packaging is bigger than the standard size, so I don't keep them here. I keep them with other digipacks and cardboard cases and stuff like that. Moving into Randy Bachman, solo album, Survivor. Right? Randy Bachman of Bachman Turner Overdrive, by the way. Another one here, solo album simply called Bachman. So this was done as a band release called Any Road. Neil Young appears on it, both Canadian artists. Another album from Randy Bachman called Merge. All right, now we're actually getting into Bachman Turner Overdrive. I do have the debut. This one is called Two, which is, the song Taking Care of Business is on here. So very popular album. Not Fragile, maybe their most popular album and my favorite out of all of them. Four Wheel Drive. Freeways. Got a lot of these here. This one here called Head On. We got the two guys, Fred Turner and Randy Bachman there. And then this one here, which is after Randy Bachman left, and they brought in, and I forget the gentleman's name, but they brought in somebody else. They made two more albums, and it's these here, Street Action, Rock and Roll Nights, and this is the BGO label. And so I've got those. All right, band got back together, at least a version of the group without Randy Bachman, and I don't think Fred Turner, but the brother, I'm trying to think of his name, Robert Bachman. So there was a B in there to be able to do this. Greatest and Latest, just re-recorded hits. That was done, I think, in the 90s. All right, original album cover from Blind Faith. I've got the non-controversial one as well. This is a cool one here. So we're starting to move into Blue Oyster Cult, and this is Stalk Forest Group. That is the original name of Blue Oyster Cult, making one album. I don't know if it was released at the time or shelved, but it's finally getting a release here. And this is on Rhino Records, the Rhino Handmade label, where they put this thing together and released it, and it was only available through Rhino Records, and you had to order it online. You couldn't go buy this in the store. But if you want to hear some very early Blue Oyster Cult, same band, just under the name Stalk Forest Group. All right, now we're actually getting into Blue Oyster Cult with the self-titled. I love the black and white years. This one probably my favorite of those albums. This is the Tyranny and Meditation. All right, and then Blue Oyster Cult, Secret Treaties. Not as big a fan of that one as the first two. All right, On Your Knees album. This is, or On Your Feet, On Your Knees. Cultus Erectus. All right, another live album by them. All right, I'm going to pull these down. I'll get to those in just a second. Revolution of the Night by Night. Blue Oyster Cult, and this one is Club Ninja, which has the song on here that I really like, Dancing in the Ruins. Very 80s sounding, but man, I really like that song. Imaginos, which incidentally, the drummer has continued on and done 3 albums, completing the storyline that was started and told, because this here was not intended to be a Blue Oyster Cult album, but ultimately the label turned it into one. So he has since continued and finished that off. A singles collection or greatest hits, one and only, that actually covers the whole career of the band at the time, at least when that was released. All right, now we're getting into some later stuff. Heaven Forbid, which I think is an absolutely outstanding Blue Oyster Cult album, even though it's on the CMC label, and this is the very early 90s when this kind of stuff just wasn't popular. It is so good and deserves to be ranked much higher than it usually gets for the band. A lot of classic sounding stuff on that. All right, next one that they did, and last one for a very long time, this one here, which was called Curse of the Hidden something. Sometimes they just, they write these things and it's so hard to read on the sides because the colors all blend together in it. All right, we got a live album from Blue Oyster Cult. Some more live albums. 40th anniversary live album of Agents of Fortune. And then we've got the 45th anniversary live in London. And their latest album, and at this point, last studio album of original new material. Although in a few weeks, they will have a new album out, but it is songs that were recorded in the 70s up through the very early 80s. And it's only just been finished off, but they're not new original songs written today with the new lineup and played with the new lineup. But either way, this one here, the symbol remains the same. Very, very cool. And the last two to show you are Baker Gurvitz Army. So I have a box set where they're those cardboard case ones. I once owned this, had a very hard time finding anything else, so I bought the box to get all 3 of their albums, but I hung on to this. And then later on I found this one in jewel case, so I pulled this one back out, and at some point when I find the 3rd album on jewel case, I will have them all, and then I might choose to get rid of that box set. It's a little in reverse of how I do things, but I want to have them all to own them, to be able to listen to them. But as you guys know, I prefer my jewel case. So Baker Gurvitz Army with Ginger Baker and Adrian Gurvitz, little super group there in the early 70s. And so there you go. That at least is what is on this part of my CD wall. And going forward, we will continue on with the next video that I'll make, covering some Bad Company, Graham Bonnet, some Lindsey Buckingham, Jackson Browne, you name it. We'll get into all the B's and stuff and more. And we're just going to keep going through this as long as you guys enjoy it. I will keep doing these videos. So let me know if you're enjoying this series, and we'll keep it up there. But otherwise, that's that. And I hope you enjoyed it. Take care, everyone, and I'll talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.